Hey, welcome to the Spark of Madness. I am one of your co-hosts, Matt Krager, this week, joined by only one of our other two co-hosts, as Ben is out. So it's just me and Aaron. Hey, Aaron.
Yes, but we also have a Matt.
That's
a
true.
second
we do
one,
have
a spare.
That's right.
Should you
we have
drop
a very
out?
special. Yeah, as it always seems, whenever we have a guest on, there's a lot of name overlap. Where somebody could just easily be replaced from a name standpoint.
That's why we got to get Ty back. His name is unique.
Yeah. But no, I'm really excited. This week we have a special guest. I'm actually excited for two very specific reasons. The first of which is I really love his podcast, The Obsessive Viewer, in particular, his year-end movie roundups and hearing all the stats and stuff. I listened to the full thing, and I'm really into all the letterbox stats. So, but yeah, this week we're joined by Matt Hurt. Hey, Matt.
Hey guys, how's it going? Thank you guys so much for having me, and thank you for the kind words. Yeah, it's super nice to know that people actually like all the stat tracking and stuff, because I feel like we get so in the weeds with that.
It sounds like a Matt thing, not a you Matt, but a my Matt.
I think it's a Matt thing. Yeah.
Matt's and stats, they go together.
Matt's and stats. But Matt, I wanted to give you kind of right out of the gate, just for people who haven't, for our listeners or viewers or whomever who haven't heard of you. We're all Indiana, podcasters, but I wanted to give you a chance to kind of introduce yourself and tell everybody kind of what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So my name is Matt Hurt, and I run obsessiveviewer.com, which is just my personal website where we post movie reviews and stuff. And then I also created, co-host, produce all that stuff. The Obsessive Viewer podcast, which is kind of just the broad movie and TV podcast, which is at obsessiveviewer.com. And then I also have two offshoot podcasts. There's Anthology, which is my solo podcast where I'm reviewing The Twilight Zone as a first-time viewer. That's at anthologypod.com. And then the third podcast is Tower Junkies, where me and my friend Tiny, we just kind of share our love of Stephen King, all things Stephen King. So that's at towerjunkiespod.com. And yeah, so that's pretty much all that I do for now.
Yeah, no, Matt, I haven't listened to your other ones, but the fact that you are going through fresh watching The Twilight Zone kind of hits my sweet spot. So, just for my understanding, you've never watched Twilight Zone before, and you're going back through completely cold, right?
Oh, completely cold. That's an event.
Yep, I've gone through the first 2 seasons of the original series, and then I also do bonus reviews of like Black Mirror and the new Twilight Zone and CBS All Access. But yeah, it's my first time going through the Twilight Zone, and it's really interesting because the thing that I like to say is that it's me just like watching the show that is iconic, that everyone loves, that I have no attachment to, but it's also me kind of discovering one of my favorite shows of all time because it's that iconic and great. Like, I have a poster for one of my favorite episodes there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
that's a crazy logo awesome. There.
So, yeah, I love it. It's a lot of fun.
Man.
Well, and ironically, before we get to the movie we're going to do on this show this week, our last time for our show we did Duck Soup and kind of got into the weeds ourselves with especially with Ben, who has a long track record, and Aaron too. I don't want to overstep that.
I know some Marx stuff, but he is the king.
Yeah, we really talked about the Marx Brothers, and ironically, a couple weeks ago, your Obsessive Viewer podcast reviewed that as well.
Yeah, that was such a nice coincidence.
What are the chances?
Yeah. Really unplanned.
Yeah, we're gonna pepper in our Duck Soup references throughout this whole show. I think, even though there's no overlap.
I won't think of a one.
I really love your guys' review of it because I went into it on my show with having not seen any Marx Brothers anything, and hearing you guys kind of deconstruct a lot of the comedy bits and the history of the Marx Brothers was just really enlightening.
Pshaw.
What's going to be a long-term thing where me and one of my co-hosts are doing a series of episodes about just kind of picking and choosing movies from Roger Ebert's great movies list and discussing them. So it's going to be a very long journey, but it'll be interesting.
So was this so when we asked you to come on this show, and I'll get to my second reason why I'm really excited for you to be here, and I hope it pays off because I didn't talk to you about it in advance, I don't think. But
Matt didn't plan something?
I don't know if so this week we're doing Blast from the Past from 1999, which stars Brendan Fraser and Alicia Silverstone. I don't know if this is this on Roger Ebert's best movies list?
I'll eat my hat if it is.
But I'm willing to bet that it's not.
Okay.
I'm actually curious what he thought of it when it came out, because I could see him being pretty harsh on this one.
Yeah, and I'm kind of interested to talk about this because I don't mean to spoil it. I kind of have a soft spot for some of this, but
Ooh.
Aaron, I know this was your pick initially when we were discussing our next movie, and you were like, you brought it up several times. Like,
I know.
Edge was like, what if we did these other ones that are more
No, Blast from the Past.
You're like, no, Blast from the Past. So why? I guess my only question is why? Why are we doing this?
Look here. This is a movie that I had never seen before. It flew completely under my radar, and then someone made mention of it, and I didn't think much of it. And then until they said Brendan Fraser, and I was like, I'm sold. I'm watching it. He makes every movie better. I don't care what anyone says.
So before we get into the details, let me read kind of just the initial plot synopsis if you haven't seen it. Like I said, this is from 1999, directed by Hugh Wilson, who I looked at some of his other movies, but
is this a Mario Brothers situation?
It's not a robust catalog. I know that he did Dudley Do Right, so there's a...
Oh, that's another one I need to see. We'll do that next week.
It did make its money back, so that's kind of interesting.
Impressive.
But the plot is Adam Weber, who's played by Brendan Fraser, has lived his entire life in confinement in a fallout shelter in Pasadena, California. When the Weber family's rations of food and supplies grow thin, the Weber family, played by Sissy Spacek and Christopher Walken, by the way, Calvin, Christopher Walken, sends him on a dangerous restocking mission. When Adam emerges from the Weber family's subterranean refuge for the first time, he finds that rumors of a nuclear apocalypse were totally false and meets gorgeous Eve Rustikoff. So you get the Adam and Eve play there. She's played by Alicia Silverstone. So yeah, 1962, I think, is the opening time frame, and Sissy Spacek is pregnant. They think there's going to be a nuclear blast, and they rush to the bomb shelter. And ultimately, he grows up in the shelter before emerging in modern day to experience the new world. That's kind of is that anything you guys would add from just a general plot standpoint?
No, I think that covers all the bases, but there's more to it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that it's a pretty concise way to synopsize it.
Synopsize it. If that wasn't a word, it is now.
So yeah, I don't know where to really begin other than with I think the start. Actually, for me, I was going to kind of ask what worked for the movie and what didn't. For me, I think the strongest, what works is really the setup, is the table setting they do with the bunker, and
which is very well set up.
Yeah, the fake out of, that ultimately was just like a plane crash, right? That they think it was a nuclear holocaust, but it was just a plane crash that destroyed their house. And that kind of incites us getting to know how eccentric and, there's a little bit of a conspiracy brain to Christopher Walken's dad character, but he has that like charming inventor to counterbalance it. And I just loved everything about their bunker. So
may I say that their setup is perfect, because you could have just had it any sort of way where they falsely believe they're about to get blown up in the Cuban Missile Crisis, whatever. But the way it's set up with the plane crashing directly on their house, had they not gone into that fallout shelter, they would have died anyway. So it's not a completely false situation.
It's not like one of those things where if like they didn't... there would have like one of those where if this didn't happen, they could have just kept living, and there was no reason for the movie to exist at all.
Right.
There was
They
still
would have
kind
died.
of like a, yeah.
So it's not completely nonsensical, false situation sort of thing. Because if it was me and I was down there for 35 years on bad information, I'd have been upset, mildly upset.
Yeah.
And also just the fact that they had like that big party and then they dismissed it because of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Like that gives a lot more like, okay, yeah, all their friends are like, yeah, they were there. Like we literally just saw them, so they're clearly dead.
Yeah. And it reinforces kind of the, I don't know, maybe I'm just this is kind of gets to my soft spot thing of like the, Cold War, Vietnam era type of movies and narratives and stuff that I just find fascinating. But the fact that there was so much paranoia during that time anyway, that you could believe that this would cause them. And they even had was it a TV ad or something? Am I remembering right? Where they're, buy a bunker. I forget if there was like
they were running newsreels at the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I just thought the premise of, a pregnant woman going down into a bunker and being so steadfast about staying down there and a child being raised in that isolated environment is such an interesting concept.
Yeah, not a lot of movies will be that bold with their setups and stuff. That's part of the reason I like this movie so much, is because it's such a kooky concept. You don't see that anymore.
I liked it too. It reminded me. It kind of seems like this type of movie was pretty. I don't know if I would say prevalent in the late '90s, but like it reminds me of at the same time we had like the Brady Bunch movie, where it's a bunch of like the Bradys are out of time, or they haven't acclimated to '90s like time or whatever, and it's I thought that was kind of interesting, but that was what worked best for me in this movie, was just the naive comedy of Brendan Fraser going through and just like experiencing like the 90s as if it was a post-apocalyptic wasteland.
Well, and his initial reaction to the, which another thing, the use of the like malt shop progression to like dilapidated cult. Like it goes through all these phases of time of like 80s bar, 90s bar, and the growth of that character to when he initially emerges, and like to him he sees this like creepy dusty guy who's unkempt, and so he believes it initially before going out into the real world.
Another perfect setup.
Yeah, the progression of the diner and everything was fantastic to me. And I like that it actually played somewhat of a role at the end of the movie too. It kind of circled back, and it wasn't just like a funny bit that was played throughout. It had some small bearance on the plot to an extent.
There's nothing wrong with bits, but if you can tie them in, it makes it that much better.
Yeah. So Brendan Fraser kind of emerges. He's now in his 30s and he's wearing like a hand-stitched jacket from his era that his mom made him, and all he knows is the bunker pretty much. And his dad tries to explain baseball to him, and he just can't understand it. And he goes up with his baseball cards and tries to sell them so that he can bring rations back down. I debated whether to bring this up, but I think it's worth mentioning because one of the very first things he says when he comes out is probably one of the most, I think it's fair to say, controversial moments of like, he says, like, he sees a black woman who's a mail carrier and goes, "Hey, a Negro."
What are you looking at?
Oh, my lucky stars! A Negro!
Say what?
How do you do, ma'am?
I do all right.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah,
like,
that's the thing, though.
It was kind of startling, but I also can kind of, and I'll just say first off is that I can understand putting that. I thought it was bold to put that into the movie.
This is 1999. It wasn't that big of an issue then. And then in 1962, that was just the word you used. So
right, and that
completely
that to me
follows.
Is the interesting idea is that they would pull that forward.
And he's so excited. He's like, "Oh, my lucky stars!"
Yeah. Now, where I think this part kind of falls apart is where she kind of responds, like less angry. I guess that to me seemed a little unrealistic, but.
I agree with you there. Yeah, I didn't have a problem with the actual scene or anything because it was reflective of the time that he was like essentially still in mentally because of the bunker. But yeah, her response was it was a little too like, oh well, hey, nice like she was a little bit befuddled.
She brushed it off. Yeah.
I mean, it is a descriptive, true word, you could say. So. What's there to get mad at?
Where does he initially kind of bounce off to? Does he go to try and... I forget. I know he
adult
freaks
bookstore
out
with the
about
poisonous
the sky,
gas.
Right?
Well, he finds the adult bookstore with the poisonous gas.
And then I think after that's when he's on the bus, maybe?
Yeah, that's when he's yelling at the bus driver to stop over and over. Oh, we're moving!
The energy has any time, like there's 2 or 3 times where he yells at the bus driver to stop, like because he doesn't know that you can just pull the handle down or whatever. The energy of that's just so great because it's like it's right on the line of like being panicky, but it's also like he just doesn't know any better. It's a really good.
I tried to give the bus driver this $100 bill, but he wouldn't take it. He seemed really angry about it.
Not to rewind too much, but the reason that Christopher Walken isn't kind of doing this himself is because he had a heart attack when he went up. And I don't want to, the fact that we make reference to the adult bookstore and he goes up with like this suit on and runs into like transvestite, he runs into like he's walking down the street, goes into the adult video store.
He runs into all the wrong things at the wrong time.
Yeah, and it's very funny that he like this is his impression of the world, which is why Adam Brendan Fraser thinks that he's like there's a subspecies of mutants up there. He's like if you find one woman who's normal, you bring her down here, which we could talk about later. But I didn't want to skip over that because I thought it was funny.
I really enjoyed the Christopher Walken character in this movie because they portray him as the sort of off-kilter scientist type, but he's never a bad father. He always sort of brings it back in a lovable way, and I like that because he wasn't completely an idiot.
Yeah.
That's usually the
also that Christopher Walken's still acting apparently. I looked him up because I was like he's got to be getting kind of up there. Like I would have thought he would have retired or something, but apparently he still has roles coming out. But yeah.
Wow.
I liked his character too.
Yeah.
I kind of liked because all the way through, even though Brendan Fraser essentially becomes the lead, we basically only follow him.
It's kind of a weird
whereas
switch.
the first 30 minutes are basically only Sissy Spacek and Christopher Walken. You can kind of see their imprint on him. Like even though they're unseen, you can kind of see their personalities having been, transferred over to him, which I thought was it speaks to how impactful both of them were at the start of the movie that you can kind of trace his behavior back to them.
Am I the only one completely put off by the mom's plastic surgery nose every time it's on screen? It's hard to watch. It's like Michael Jackson territory, man.
Oh wow! It didn't even really register with me, honestly. But I did like the parents' characters and everything. But I kind of thought that the movie was a little bit weirdly paced. Like it's like almost I don't know, like 30 to 45 minutes before Alicia Silverstone's even introduced or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like turns into a completely different movie because they have to do all that stuff in above ground. But I do agree that the parents' kind of influence does permeate through the rest of his character. So it's needed to have that kind of lengthy setup. So I don't mind it.
I don't. Yeah, I think for me, there was there is kind of like a big swing, right? And I think you phrased it perfectly. Is that it's kind of high concept, but it almost does become almost two different movies, especially even it becomes almost a romantic comedy.
It is
versus this high concept kind of
Yeah.
silly, fiction that they're play out a hypothetical. Basically, it then becomes almost a more generic type of fish out of water romantic comedy. But for me, it's just the start of the movie and that initial, like, I'm in the new world. That to me was just so strong that I enjoyed it. Now, once it kind of shifts over, that's where there's a couple more weaker points. But I will say, I was texting Aaron that Brendan Fraser, when he first came onto the scene, I was like, Brendan Fraser, you're not very good. And then within like two minutes, I was like, no, I'm wrong. He's awesome.
Proved
He's
you're
perfect
wrong
for this.
every time. He's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he was great in this movie. Like, he plays that just naive but happy-go-lucky kind of guy. Like, it's something that is so goofy and so against like all of these like straight characters and everything that I don't know. He plays it really well. I really liked it.
Never for a second did I doubt his authenticity.
Right. Like, even when he is like having that kind of altercation with Nathan Fillion, which Nathan Fillion was in this movie.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
He sure was.
He's having that altercation where he's kind of threatening him, or he's standing up for Eve, and he's like threatening to like fight him or whatever in like the most sincere and friendly way possible, if that makes sense, even if it's a contradiction.
I know how to defend myself.
I love that scene where he just like kind of is like looking away and keeps punching. Like, when someone's coming to hit him, he's not going to get sucker punched because he's been taught by his dad to like how to fight and stuff.
Yeah, they made sure to show
funny.
that scene in the bunker where the dad and him are boxing.
Yeah.
Good little setup.
And his dance moves too. His dance moves came through.
Yeah.
Everything was like a what do you call it? An alley oop in sport ball terms.
Have you guys seen Bedazzled, the movie?
I have. I just don't remember a lick of it.
I haven't seen it at all. I avoided it.
I remember in high school watching it and just loving it. I am sure if I watched it now, I'd hate it. But I remember Brendan Fraser just being so over the top crazy, and he plays like 15 characters.
That's right.
So he's just every version of him. And when you said sport ball, it reminded me of when he plays this like 8-foot tall basketball player, because one of his devil's wishes is to be a celebrity superstar.
Wasn't one of the scenes where he's like sweating profusely?
Yeah. He's just like, we play real good. It's just like sweating all over his face.
Now, I would never want to diss your teammates in any way, shape, or form, but you do realize that you smashed to bits Will Chamberlain's heretofore unbreakable record of 100 points in a single basketball game set in Hershey, Pennsylvania all those years ago. Oh, man, you just got to play one game at a time and go out there and give 110%, and you just got to show that you want it more than they do when chips fall where they may. Thank you very much. Back to you, Jerry and Dan.
He's like, and he has no vocabulary at all. So he's like a caveman. It's so funny.
I remember there being
I'm gonna
like
pull that
brow
clip.
extensions on him or something. There had to be prosthetics in my memory. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll have to check out.
Yeah, you should check it out, Matt.
I'm gonna have to watch Dudley Do Right.
I haven't seen any. I haven't watched Doom Patrol. I don't know what he's been up to other than that. So I miss him.
He's mostly been just dealing with alimony. He's fine though.
So Matt, I guess I'll put you on the spot, and I don't know if this is even relevant, to be honest. But I heard from our friends that You're Gonna Love This or Not podcast that you interviewed Brendan Fraser. Is that true?
Yeah. So it was last year. It was like a 3-minute interview. It wasn't even
That's
like
more than you
anything
could ever
big
hope
or
for.
anything. But at Heartland Film Festival, they did an anniversary screening of The Mummy and Gods and Monsters, I think. And they flew him into town and everything, and they do like red carpet stuff for Heartland. I don't know if you guys have ever been, but it's pretty cool. But I was covering it and everything, and like, okay, like this year's like big one was like, oh, Brendan Fraser is gonna be there, so I'm like, okay, cool, I'm gonna talk to Brendan Fraser, and so he's going down the line, and I introduce myself and everything. I'm like, oh, hey, I'm a big fan of. I think I actually said to him like, oh, I really liked Blast from the Past because I watched it a lot when I was a kid.
And he's like, oh, my lucky stars, you remembered it.
But it was kind of awkward because he was like just off the plane, like he had just, and he apparently has some kind of ties to Indianapolis, like he used to live here, and so he's jet lagged. He's like I didn't know what to say because I don't remember The Mummy that well, and I had never seen Gods and Monsters. So I'm like, oh, hey, how's it go? How's it feel good being back to Indianapolis? And then he's like, oh yeah, it's great. Just got off the plane and it's raining. And I'm like, yeah. And then there was a lull, and I think I asked him again, like what it was like. But he was super nice about it, even though I was a jackass. But no, it was really cool. He was
You were
friendly.
starstruck. It's understandable.
Yeah.
Now, I would say that along with Steve
just
Odekirk,
stammer out. What would you say, Aaron?
Brendan Fraser is now in the group with Steve Odekirk of people that we are trying to get on this show. So,
Okay, he's
Matt
in the
number 2,
list.
if
Okay.
you ever talk to him again, we need him on this show.
Yeah.
I will definitely reach out to him. We became fast friends, and
We see each other every Saturday,
I actually have a Zoom call with him after this.
And tell him to get in with Tubi so they can sponsor us too.
That's right, yeah. I probably would have just, can you read hieroglyphics? I would only think of Egyptian things. I wouldn't know what to say.
I like the Scorpion King. Damn it.
Wrong one.
Oh
Yeah.
It was pretty awkward, but pretty fun. It was cool.
All right, so we were just talking about Brendan Fraser. I think is as good a point as any to kind of transition into what most of the movie ultimately becomes about is when Alicia Silverstone kind of enters the scene. How did you feel about Alicia Silverstone's entrance and progression?
Okay, I'm going to say this. I think she can act. I just don't like her face. I just don't. What was the description that I gave you? It's like she's an android, and they've stretched human skin over her android face, and it has to exaggerate to make you believe it's human. That's what she is. A good actress android stretchy face.
I don't know if I would go that far.
You said you didn't like her face too.
I can understand to a degree. Like it was noticeable to me the way her mouth kind of is, I guess. But to me, I think she's a fine actress. I think in this movie she was maybe not necessarily the best choice. But what do you think, Matt?
She was the best choice at the time. I mean, she was really hot at those times,
Yeah, I prefer her performance in Clueless, which is a movie that I hold near and dear to my heart.
We won't tell nobody.
And I thought she was fine in this. I bought into their kind of romantic connection. I guess it was
believable.
fine. Yeah, when she starts getting jealous of him, when he's especially at the club when he's dancing with the women and she's getting like super jealous and everything. I bought that as like she's coming to realize like, oh, okay, he's not just someone to write off entirely. Like I kind of bought that stage of the relationship. The thing that I didn't really care that much about is just the kind of the evolution of that. Like that was like the least interesting part of the movie. Like at this point, like Matt, like you said, it kind of transitions into another movie. And by doing that, it turns into this kind of cliched rom-com, which I am an unabashed fan of the romantic comedy, but it's like there's nothing really interesting to that except for the fact that he was in a bunker for 35 years. And that is something that becomes secondary to their kind of cliched romantic relationship. So yeah, but I thought she did a fine job.
Well, my half-assed retort to that is, yeah, but we've got Dave Foley on board, and whenever the scenes were dragging, I was like, let's get Dave Foley back in here. He's always fun.
Yeah, I liked the Dave Foley, and to some degree, he was like an extension. I don't know. He almost covered up a lot of those scenes, right? Like even the scenes where she was jealous, he kind of served as this
saved them.
out loud voice, I guess, of like, you look like you're jealous. Like he was almost just narrating some of those aspects, but he was very good. I think some of the undercut for me was that she didn't. I think some of the comedy was supposed to emerge that he was behaving so wildly, and they didn't know yet. They didn't know for a really long time that he was in the bunker.
Right.
This isn't like Kimmy Schmidt where it's front and center. They were kind of like responding to just this bizarre guy that's fallen into their lives.
He's from Alaska.
Yeah, he's from Alaska. And he was very reluctant to share some of those details, but I think some of it was like it just wasn't as fully realized. And then when he did share that information, I thought the scene with the family services person and the way they wrapped up the movie, I thought was really clunky, to be honest. I thought they tried to introduce something that was going to tie it back together a little bit, and like, oh, the big payoff moment for her to like all this new information. I don't know. I just wasn't. I didn't think it worked very well. I didn't, even if I thought it was realistic that she would reach out to this group that would kind of come to support this child. That
good or bad, they wrote themselves into that corner.
Well, yeah, and I mean I guess the last thought I'd say about it is that even if you can get behind like that happening, it basically did nothing. Like he just immediately drives off, and he for some reason doesn't come back looking for her. It just kind of, and then she stumbles upon him.
They needed him to disappear so that Eve could be like, where'd he go? I need to find him.
Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't think the end was very good. Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just going to agree with you that I totally agree that felt almost completely out of place. Like it kind of seemed like, okay, well, on one hand, it's showing that she does genuinely care for him and everything, despite thinking that he's like has some very severe problems and not buying his story and everything. But yeah, the whole social services aspect of it is just like introduced and then just gone because it's just a thing to get them to the next cliched romantic comedy bit.
I don't know. I'm not going to strongly defend the moment, but it does show how indecisive and I don't know, she's never sure of what she's thinking is what I gather by that point. And that moment helps her to sort of realize what she's feeling and thinking. I don't know. It's not the most elegant way to do it, but it seemed true to form for her at least. Do something rash and then realize what a dummy you were.
Yeah, it does kind of give that character more development for sure.
Not much, but some.
Right. It does serve that purpose. Too.
Of like clarifying what she wants, like rather than just bouncing around from thing to thing, which I think was kind of her go-to. And
they made it pretty clear.
And then the other thing you mentioned, Nathan Fillion as this like, Dave Foley is that voice again. He's like, you only go for hot, stupid guy, like vapid people, and don't want to actually commit emotionally to anybody. And so Brendan Fraser serves as that person, I guess. But I thought, so part of the social, right before the social services scene where he kind of opens up about his past is because Adam basically is like, my dad said that if I find a healthy young girl, I should bring her down to the bunker to live with. Like, I took on this like really creepy vibe that I thought they were gonna go with, but then they didn't. And maybe that's where my disappointment is.
Well, she did call social services after that.
Yeah, but she didn't like. You're a murderer. Like she didn't. Like,
well, she didn't know.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. She's very trusting of him, I guess.
No, she brought up the implication that he may be a murderer, as I recall. I think she mentioned that to Dave Foley.
That's true, yeah.
Was that before or after they danced to YMCA? We get it. He's gay.
Yeah, they did not sugarcoat that for this. How did you feel about? I'm out now at the bottom of my list, and I'll just ask, and then we can go back to anything else. But the kind of wrap up now, he brings her down to the bunker, and they kind of fast forward through. Here's all the things we did with the money that we got from the baseball cards we sold. What did you guys think of how they kind of closed the movie?
Oh, I was fine with it. I like the idea. Like, something that I didn't really understand was why we needed voiceover narration, like out of nowhere. It felt like they were trying to figure out, like, okay, how can we tell the rest of the story? Like, how can we just, without having to shoot too much or show too much, or we don't have enough coverage to actually show it visually. So let's just have Alicia come in and read some words. That felt out of place and everything. But
it was a very Blade Runner theatrical cut.
Yes. But I thought it was fine. I did really like that last shot with Christopher Walken. I thought that was really fun. But for the most part, at that point, I was just like, okay. The thing that I liked the most about this movie was the naive comedy of Brendan Fraser and the fish out of water aspect of it, and that's about it. So I'd kind of checked out to an extent.
Huh. Well, as for the ending, I mean, it was inoffensive. I mean, it was nice that they showed that Christopher Walken finally knows what happened, and he's like, can't believe it, and then he just shrugs it off. 35 years, whatever. But the point is that they had a good time doing it.
Yeah. The couple things I kind of liked about the end was when Sissy Spacek, she's finally out of the bunker, because she was kind of the one that was so stir crazy and just completely anxious to leave, and she, gestures when they're in their new house that they bought them. Cal, Christopher Walken's like, it's not that different from the bunker, and she's like, yeah, it is. So she gestures to like wide open nature, and just the.
To his credit, though, the bunker was exactingly made to be just like the house, and it was very impressive.
Yeah. The bunker was super. Yeah, the like fish tank thing. So it's like we're never going hungry for anything.
Yeah. The aisles like a grocery store with a insane.
Yeah. Dad went all out. They should be thanking him.
Yeah.
What I want to know is where the poop all went.
Yeah, I didn't think about that until today. Where did it go? Were they using it as like biofuel to power things?
No, yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
Burning
Just
it for the methane gas and then using that?
He's probably invented like the cleanest renewable energy down there.
There's only one thing I want to know.
Power the world.
I have another big one for you. Here's a brain scratcher. How did Brendan Fraser not immediately die of sickness when he got up to the surface from being isolated from everything for 35 years? How did he not get the cold and die? How did he not catch the flu and die? Unless the dad invented something that lets air pump down from the surface.
I vaccinated you for all current and future diseases.
The CIA told me what would happen, which viruses...
I'm immortal. And I love baseball.
They told me not to tell you about COVID.
Yeah, how would Christopher Walken's Cal respond to COVID?
You're going to want to invest in mask futures.
Oh my God. Okay.
Can I tell you one big takeaway though? The big thing that I took from the movie that made me happy was the theme that society as present day then, there were a lot of things that weren't so good about it. And the Brendan Fraser character helped all those people that he connected with realize that maybe progression for progression's sake wasn't a great thing, and we had some lessons to learn from the past. Like, because they had that whole thing about manners. Like, Dave Foley was like, apparently manners are just a way of making everybody feel comfortable. I thought it was just to make everyone else feel less than you.
Yeah.
So they learned something.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, that was going to be. I was actually going to save that for when I gave my rating, but that was my. I think aside from specific scenes and the technical aspects of the movie, I thought that was kind of the nicest takeaway was that there are values from the past that we can learn from and are still relevant. Whereas, they embrace this whole movie of like, he's silly and look how out of place he is and naive or juvenile he kind of seems. And to a degree that's true, but there's also like virtues in all of that that are still important. And I think I think you hit it right on the head, is that manners line is kind of the big moment.
We really got rid of those, didn't we?
Perfect table manners.
I asked him about that. He said good manners are just a way of showing other people that we have respect for them. See, I didn't know that. I thought it was just a way of acting all superior. Oh, you know what else he told me?
What?
He thinks I'm a gentleman and you're a lady.
Well, consider the source. I don't even know what a lady is.
I know. I thought a gentleman was somebody that owned horses. But it turns out the short and simple definition of a lady or a gentleman is someone who always tries to make sure that the people around him or her are as comfortable as possible.
Where do you think he got all that information?
Off from the oddest place. His parents. I don't think I got that memo from mine.
Sure did.
I have my elbows on the table right now. Rude of me.
Yeah, I agree though. That was a really endearing part of the movie. I like that. Yeah.
It was rock solid. Aside from movies can be funny, but if it doesn't have any kind of underpinning, you don't really take anything away from it. It's a whatever. This had something to take away.
I do think there's maybe and I don't know. I don't have a well thought out kind of statement on this, but I do think there's an oversimplified perception of the 50s and early 60s.
Oh yeah,
of everybody's so perfect and so polite and nice and
golly.
I don't think. That's the TV version, which then kind of is fun to translate into a story.
It's got to be
this,
half fake.
Yeah. So I guess as a call out, but the fact that you can kind of see how it, you can port that, time machine it into the present and see how it behaves, I think is what's so great. The great part of this movie is the concept and how it kind of toys.
It was bold. You don't see anything like that anymore. That's why I wanted to do this movie, because it's a dang romantic comedy, and it's got more meat on its bones than most movies coming out today at all. Stupid.
It's kind of like the reverse Back to the Future, because it's just showing, the present day as of when it was released versus the past. So I appreciate it for that.
I'm ready for Blast for the Past 2, where we see Brendan Fraser's caveman ancestors come to the present and just behave the exact same way with Christopher. Bring back, maybe that's what Christopher Walken's working on.
Grug need more yacht batteries.
Isn't that basically in Steel Man though?
Oh no!
Yeah,
it is. I have seen that. Good movie.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so at the end of our episodes, we like to kind of give a out of 10. What would you rate this movie? And we'll let Matt go last because I don't think I forewarned you on this. But Aaron, why don't you go first?
Okay. I don't think it's a perfect movie, but I like it, and I feel like everyone would learn something, get something, laugh at something in this movie. Out of this movie. I didn't word that well. I give it a 5. 5 out of 10.
That's what I gave it to. And I think Aaron and I have kind of synchronized our, what that means of I think this is definitely a movie worth seeing. I think there's a lot to it.
5 is the cutoff of suck.
I debated between a 6 or a 5 actually. So it's kind of on the higher end.
I wanted to give it a 6 too, but I don't feel like that would be genuine.
I think the way it ended really, it starts super strong and it's kind of like a slope down all the way through for me, which doesn't bode well. But if it had like kind of swung back up or had some other scenes, it could have been a little bit higher. But I still really enjoyed it. This is the second time I saw it, and
I watched it twice before we did this review.
Yeah, so I gave it a 5. How about you, Matt?
Honestly, I would go ahead and take the plunge and give it a 6 out of 10.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't have my sound effect board. I can't do air horns.
I'll add it in.
And even though I didn't really care for a lot of the kind of cliched aspect of it and the pacing, which I thought was still really off in terms of transitioning from different movie to different movie, essentially, which even when Dave Foley is introduced, he's introduced like at the almost exact halfway point of the entire movie. And it's like, it's clear that, okay, we've exhausted the whole fish out of water with Alicia Silverstone. So now we need a third party into this group to breathe new life into the comedy. And it just felt like just really clunky in everything. But the reason I do 6 out of 10 is on one hand, I just really like the comedy of that fish out of water aspect of it. And I am a sucker for any type of time travel in the movie. So it does get a point there, even though it's like not really conventional time travel. Like I said, it's a reverse Back to the Future. And then the third reason why I rated it 6 out of 10 is that I actually have a ton of nostalgia for this movie. This was a movie that we watched when I was a kid, when it was like on like HBO or one of the premium networks, like all the time. Like after school, I would be like, oh, okay, Meet the Parents is on. And then, after this is going to be Blast from the Past. Mm-hmm. And so I have like that nostalgia kind of there, kind of waiting it. And even with the issues that I had with the movie overall, that it still hit that kind of nostalgic point for me. So 6 out of 10.
Oh, awesome. Well, Aaron, we did it. We did Blast from the Past.
We've done it. I'd give our review a 6 out of 10. Do you have any plans for what we're to do next?
Yeah, I do. I think I don't know if we'll do one in between, but I do know either the next episode or the one after is going to be The Vast of Night.
Vast of Night, okay.
Our
That's
buddy
right.
Colin,
You did mention that. I had a thought we could do for Tubi's consideration. We could do a whole month of Tubi movies.
I'm all in. I'm all in for that. And if it doesn't work, then maybe it's time to move on.
No. We are not going to be friend zoned by Tubi, okay?
Persistence.
We love you, Tubi. When are you gonna realize it?
Please text us back. we see that you read our text.
Tubi, please respond.
Matt, what's coming up for you for Obsessive Viewer and your other shows?
Well, on Anthology, I'm finishing up, or I'm about halfway through the new season of the Twilight Zone reboot on CBS All Access. So that I'm taking a little bit of a break from that, but I'm about to pump out a bunch of episodes on that front. Tower Junkies, we're going to eventually start reviewing The Stand whenever we get word of when the remake or the miniseries is going to be released on CBS All Access. So that'll be on that. And then Obsessive Viewer, we're about to do, or we're about to release a review of Palm Springs and The Old Guard.
Okay.
Good. Love Palm Springs though. So that's what's coming up on the Obsessive Viewer podcast and everything. And thank you guys so much for bringing me on and everything. It's been a blast from the past.
Hey. Only we get to do stuff like that. Real quick, Matt number 2. Out of 10 rating on Dr. Sleep, go.
9.5.
Okay. I haven't seen it. I just wanted to see what another Stephen King fan thought.
Nice. Have you read the book?
I have not.
Okay. Are you a fan of the Stanley Kubrick movie?
Yes.
And are you a fan of the novel The Shining?
Not as much, actually.
Okay, interesting. I think you'll like Dr. Sleep because it's what Mike Flanagan did with it is nothing short of a magic trick, honestly.
With a few exceptions, I usually find King's writing to be a little dry. But
I can understand that.
Yeah.
It's very much a he's famous for just kind of free writing and like not planning anything out.
And by free writing, you mean coke writing.
Yes. Oh yeah. Like I read the Tommyknockers twice, and that was the last book that he wrote before he got clean. And I swear I can 2 or 3 times even, because I listened to it on Audible for Tower Junkies purposes, and like I just can't put together what that book is. Because it is such a mess of a novel.
Yeah, I would also say Dreamcatcher was the one where he got clean, right?
Dreamcatcher was the one where he
he was in the process of getting
opposite.
clean.
No, he was
in a car accident.
It was after the car accident.
He was right after. That's when he was.
Well,
like,
you can't
really,
do coke in a hospital, can you?
Well, he was on. Wasn't he on like all the painkillers and stuff when he was writing?
Yeah, but within legal amounts.
Yeah, but he was so out of it, and he wrote that by hand and everything, in like a notebook and everything.
Yeah.
That one yeah.
I want to revisit our episode on that.
Oh yeah,
I vaguely remember that being one of our funniest ones.
That was like that was an early one.
That was a long time ago, yeah. So, hey, go listen and watch our old Dreamcatchers episode. And then go, listen to Matt's entire Stephen King content.
Give us a thumbs up or don't.
Yeah. But yeah, Matt, thank you so much for coming on, especially so spur of the moment for such a random movie. I'm glad it was one that you have some nostalgia for too. So that, of course, everything with this podcast seems to like be serendipitous. So it was great having you on.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. It's been a blast. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to your guys' review of The Vast of Night, because spoiler alert, that's one of my favorite movies of the year. So I'm super excited.
Awesome. Yeah, we've heard very good things. So I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
All right. Until next time. See you, everybody.